But they were both wrong, because it was my mum, carrying a cake with candles on it, and behind her was Mrs. Sanders and Ahmet's foster mum and Miss Hemsey and the woman who had been at the interview and who Michael had said was Ahmet's caseworker, and another woman we'd never seen before who was walking with her hand on Ahmet's shoulder. I could tell Ahmet was happy because he was smiling, but his eyes looked wet and a little red too, just like Miss Hemsey's had in the corridor. And within a few seconds the whole class was singing happy birthday to me just as loudly as they could. After Mum helped me blow out the candles, Ahmet and Miss Hemsey and the woman who still had her hand on his shoulder stood at the front of the class with Mrs. Khan. "Quieten down, please, everyone," called out Mrs. Khan. "We'll cut the cake in a few minutes, but first I want everyone to say good afternoon to our extra special guest, Miss Duncan." The woman standing beside Ahmet stepped forward as everyone shouted out, "Good afternoon, Miss Duncan." She was wearing a bright blue suit and had short grey hair and a green diamond ring. "Now, Miss Duncan has come here today from very far away because she has some important news to share with us all," said Mrs. Khan. "Over to you, Miss Duncan." Miss Duncan nodded and looked straight at me with a smile before looking around at everyone. "Good afternoon, everyone. I'm from the Home Office, which is a government department that controls who comes in and out of our country." "Like the police?" called out Dean. "No, not like the police," smiled Miss Duncan. She waited for more questions, but no one else said anything. Everyone was deathly silent now, and I could feel my whole chest beating so hard it felt like someone was playing the drums on my tummy. Miss Duncan carried on. "Today I had the pleasure of bringing Ahmet some special news, and he has very kindly said he would like to share it with all of you. Ahmet?" She held out a plain white envelope that had no address on it and offered it to him. But Ahmet didn't take it and whispered something to Miss Hemsey instead. Miss Hemsey frowned at first, but then laughing and crying all at once gestured at me to come up. He would like his best friend to read it to everyone, she explained. For a moment I couldn't move. Then Josie gave me a kick under the table that made me stand up and slowly walk over to where Ahmet was standing. Miss Duncan waited until I was standing in front of her and holding out the envelope to me said, "A very happy birthday, Alexa, from all of us. Thanks to you and to Josie and Michael and Tom, of course. There have been thousands of people writing in and signing petitions and calling our offices just to ask how they could help Ahmet and lots of other refugee children like him. And because of that, well, here you go." Ahmet nodded and added, "Happy birthday, best friend." I opened my mouth, but I think all my words must have disappeared and my brain had stopped working because I couldn't really think any thoughts anymore. Ahmet tapped the envelope in my hand and said, "You read it, for me." I tried to take the piece of paper out of the envelope, but there were so many eyes staring at me and Ahmet's eyes looked so big that my fingers got nervous and started to shake. "Here, darling, let me help," whispered my mum, as she jumped up and quickly took out the folded piece of paper that lay inside. Opening it up, she held me close as we read it out loud together. It said, "Status, Family Investigation Summary. Ahmet Sakal, aged 9. Father, Mohammed Sakal, age 43. Profession, a Professor of Engineering. Country of origin, Syria. Status, located, Calais Refugee Camp, France. Mother, Samira Sakal, age 45. Profession, journalist. Country of origin, Syria. Status, located, medical facility, Turkey. Home Office outcome, granted permanent asylum in the UK. Reunification of family imminent." I looked up at Mum and then at Ahmet and back at Mum again. "What does asylum mean?" My mum smiled, but her eyes were watery too. "It means they can come and live here, darling. Ahmet's mum and dad are coming to the UK. They've been found." I looked up at Ahmet, who was nodding excitedly, and then I looked at Josie and Tom and Michael, who were all staring back at me with their mouths open. And then I looked at Mrs. Khan, who was saying a prayer, and Miss Hemsey, who was crying so much she'd grabbed Mrs. Sanders and was making her go red in the face. And suddenly Michael jumped up and shouted, "We did it!" And the whole class started cheering and whooping and jumping and clapping all at once. I know that afternoon was one of the best afternoons I will ever have. Not because it was my birthday, but because it was an end to one of the best adventures a brand new 10-year-old could ever have, and the beginning of a whole set of new adventures that I bet even Tintin never had. And it was all thanks to a boy who came and sat at the back of the class and who let me be his friend. The end.